The room fell silent before anyone understood why. One moment, the hall was full of alien laughter, floating lights, and diplomatic boredom. The next, a single word changed everything. Yes. Not shouted. Not dramatic. Just calm, clear, and final. And in that instant, humanity accidentally stepped onto the most dangerous stage in the galaxy. Cairo Knox never planned to be important. He was a human systems engineer, not a diplomat, not a soldier, and definitely not someone trained to speak carefully in rooms filled with powerful aliens. He worked best with broken machines, faulty logic, and impossible problems, things that could be fixed if you stared at them long enough. The Helix Convergence Station was the opposite of that. It floated at the crossing point of 12 interstellar trade routes, owned by no one and controlled by everyone. Humans called it a miracle of cooperation. Aliens called it a necessary inconvenience. The truth was simpler. It was where arguments came to live. Cairo stood near the edge of the Grand Assembly Hall, holding a glass of something warm, glowing, and definitely not approved by human health agencies. The air smelled artificial, clean, recycled, and layered with alien pheromones his nose couldn't decode. Above them, the ceiling shifted like a slow galaxy. Stars projected to remind everyone how small they were. Humans were new here. Too new. Too loud. Too creative. And most species didn't trust that. The negotiations had been dragging on for months. The coalition of elder species controlled jumpgate access, energy distribution, and interstellar law. Humanity wanted fair access. The coalition wanted control. Every meeting ended the same way: polite smiles, hidden threats, and nothing changing. Cairo wasn't even supposed to speak today. He was only there to support the human delegation, fix translator glitches, and keep the ancient alien systems from crashing under human software updates. But boredom had a way of loosening tongues, and Cairo had always used humor as armor. That's when Ambassador Salith Vera approached him. She was tall, calm, alien in a way that felt deliberate. Her species, the Aurelian Concord, were respected and feared. They lived for centuries, spoke carefully, and treated diplomacy like a long game of chess where humans barely understood the rules. Her skin shimmered like polished stone under soft light, shifting colors with her mood. Her eyes were facete, reflective, and sharp, not cruel, just endlessly observant. She wore no visible weapons, which meant she didn't need them. "You look uncomfortable, human Cairo," she said, her translator smooth and precise. Cairo forced a smile. "I always look uncomfortable in rooms where one wrong sentence can start a war." Salith tilted her head slightly. "Then you should speak less." "That's never worked for me." That earned him a pause. Aurelians didn't pause unless something unexpected happened. They spoke for a while. About systems. About culture. About how humans fixed problems by breaking them first. Salith listened in a way that made Cairo forget he was talking to someone powerful enough to block Earth's trade routes with a vote. Around them, negotiations stalled again. Another proposal rejected. Another delay announced. Someone groaned. Someone laughed bitterly. And that's when Cairo said it. "Well," he said casually, lifting his glass, "at this rate, it'd be faster if I married an Aurelian and skipped the committees." The words landed softly. At first, people chuckled. A human joke. Harmless. Self-deprecating. Cairo smiled, already turning away. "Yes." The word cut through the hall like a blade. Cairo froze. Every Aurelian delegate went still. Human diplomats stiffened. Translators rechecked themselves. The projected stars above flickered as systems detected a sudden spike in neural activity. Salith Vera stepped forward. "I accept," she said calmly. "The proposal is valid." The silence that followed was absolute. Cairo laughed once. A short, nervous sound. "I'm sorry, that was a joke." Salith looked at him. Truly looked at him. "In Aurelian law," she said, "a public proposal made in a neutral diplomatic forum is binding if accepted without delay." Whispers exploded across the hall. Human delegates surged forward, faces pale. Coalition elders began speaking at once. Security systems hummed awake. Cairo's heart pounded. This is a misunderstanding. No, Salith replied. This is an agreement. Her color shifted, subtle, controlled, determined. The central arbiter drone descended, ancient and impartial. Proposal acknowledged, it intoned. Union pending verification. All negotiations suspended. Suspended. Just like that. Centuries-old talks, halted by a human joke. Cairo turned slowly, seeing the shock ripple across species. Some looked furious. Some amused. Some afraid. Humanity hadn't forced anything. They hadn't threatened. They hadn't even planned. But somehow, impossibly, they had changed the game. Salith leaned closer, her voice low. You speak without fear, Cairo Knox. That is rare. I speak without thinking, he muttered. She almost smiled. As security escorted them from the hall, Cairo realized something terrifying. This wasn't about marriage. It was about precedent. If the Union stood, human and Aurelian law would merge. Trade restrictions would dissolve. Power structures would shift. The coalition's carefully balanced control would fracture. All because a human treated diplomacy like a conversation instead of a ritual. Behind them, the galaxy watched. And for the first time, the ancient powers wondered if humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its fleets or technology, but its complete refusal to take the universe as seriously as it demanded. The joke was over. The consequences were just beginning. The galaxy reacted before Cairo Knox had time to panic properly. News spread faster than light ever could, through whispers, emergency channels, and quiet alarms buried deep in alien networks. A human had proposed. An Aurelian had accepted. And the rules everyone thought were unbreakable had just bent in a way that terrified the old powers. By the time Cairo woke up, the universe had already decided his life was no longer his own. He lay in a small guest chamber aboard Helix Convergence Station, staring at the ceiling as soft lights adjusted to his heart rate. His wrist display pulsed non-stop with unread messages. Humans. Aliens. Unknown species. Some congratulated him. Others demanded explanations. A few were threats disguised as politeness. Cairo sat up and rubbed his face. I made one joke, he muttered. One. The door chimed. Before he could answer, it slid open. Commander Elira Voss stepped inside, human military posture wrapped in a civilian suit that failed to hide authority. She didn't smile. We have a problem, she said. Cairo sighed. Only one. She crossed her arms. The coalition has invoked a neutral legitimacy inquiry. That got his attention. What's that? Elira's expression hardened. It's how powerful species undo things they don't like without starting wars. They'll question your intent, her intent, and whether the proposal was made in good faith. If they prove it wasn't, the Union dissolves. And negotiations go back to normal, Cairo said quietly. Yes. And humanity goes back to waiting centuries for permission. Cairo leaned back. So they'll ask if I was serious. They'll do more than ask, Elira replied. They'll analyze your neural patterns, emotional state, cultural background, and communication history. Truth verification across species. Cairo laughed once. I don't even know when I'm serious. That, Elira said, is exactly why they're afraid of you. Later that day, the inquiry chamber filled. It was circular, massive, and deliberately uncomfortable, designed to strip away hierarchy. No thrones. No elevated platforms. Everyone stood equal under harsh white light. Representatives from 13 species formed a ring around a single space in the center. Cairo stood there alone. Salith Vera stood across from him. She was composed, her shifting skin calm and steady, but Cairo noticed the subtle tension in her posture. Aurelians didn't gamble lightly. If she was here, she had accepted risk. The Arbiter core activated. Proceed, it said. The questions began gently. Cairo Knox. Did you intend your proposal as a legally binding offer? Cairo swallowed. No. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Salith did not react. Did you understand Aurelian proposal law at the time of speaking? No. More murmurs. Satisfaction from some delegates. Relief from others. Then, the arbiter continued, by your own admission, the proposal lacked informed intent. Cairo opened his mouth, then stopped. Something felt wrong. He looked at Salith. She met his eyes, calm but searching. The arbiter continued. Ambassador Salith Vera, did you believe the proposal to be genuine? Yes, she said immediately. Silence fell again. Explain. Salith stepped forward. Human humor is often used to express truths indirectly. I assessed contextual patterns, behavioral consistency, and prior interactions. His words aligned with deeper intent, even if his conscious mind resisted it. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. Cairo blinked. Wait, what? She glanced at him briefly. You speak honestly when you are not careful. The arbiter processed this. Intent discrepancy detected, it said. Further examination required. That's when the coalition made its move. An elder from the Threx Dominion spoke, voice sharp and cold. This union destabilizes existing power frameworks. It must be annulled for the sake of balance. Elira Voss stepped forward. Objection. That's not how neutrality works. The Threx elder ignored her. Humans are unpredictable. This proves it. Cairo felt something shift inside him. Unpredictable. That word followed humanity everywhere. Used as an excuse. A leash. He stepped forward without thinking. Again. You're right, Cairo said. We are unpredictable. All eyes turned to him. But that's because we solve problems you stop trying to solve. A ripple of tension passed through the chamber. You built systems so rigid they fear laughter, Cairo continued. We build tools, break them, and rebuild them better. I didn't propose to seize power. I joked because your rules are so heavy they crush progress. The arbiter paused. Statement logged. Salith's skin shimmered, surprise, then something warmer. Cairo took a breath. If this union scares you, it's not because it's illegal. It's because it proves your control isn't absolute. Silence stretched. The arbiter spoke again. Intent re-evaluation in progress. Minutes passed. Long ones. Finally. Conclusion. Proposal intent classified as emergent sincerity. Confusion erupted. The arbiter explained. Human cognitive structures allow intent to form after expression. The proposal became sincere through consequence acknowledgement. The Threx elder hissed. That's absurd. It is human, the arbiter replied. The ruling echoed through the chamber. Union stands. The room exploded. Some delegates protested. Others retreated. Human representatives stared in disbelief. Salith turned to Cairo. You chose, she said softly. He exhaled. I guess I did. As they exited the chamber together, alarms rang across the station, not warnings, but alerts. Treaties recalculating. Power maps shifting. Trade algorithms rewriting themselves in real time. Humanity hadn't forced the galaxy to change. They had simply stepped sideways, and the universe had followed. And somewhere deep within the ancient systems of the coalition, a new variable appeared, one no equation could fully predict. Human choice. The celebration was quiet, and that made it more frightening than any alarm. Helix Convergence Station did not erupt into cheers or chaos after the ruling. Instead, systems adjusted. Doors rerouted. Schedules rewrote themselves. Treaties that had been frozen for decades began to move again, slowly, like ancient machinery waking from sleep. Cairo Knox felt none of it. He stood in a private observation corridor, staring at a curve of stars that meant nothing and everything at the same time. His reflection in the glass looked the same, dark hair, tired eyes, human. But the universe no longer treated him that way. He wasn't just a person now. He was a variable. "You're avoiding everyone," Salith said behind him. He didn't turn. "If I face them, they'll want answers. I don't have any good ones." She moved beside him, her presence calm and steady. The lights reflected softly across her shifting skin. "You chose honesty. That is rare. And dangerous." "Yeah," Cairo said. "That seems to be a theme." They stood in silence for a moment, watching a cargo ship slide into the docking ring. Humans worked beside aliens inside it, arguing, laughing, improvising. Salith spoke again. "The Coalition did not expect you to accept the consequences." "I didn't either." "Most species treat words as weapons or contracts," she said. "Humans treat them as tools. Flexible. Changeable." Cairo finally looked at her. "That's not always a good thing." "No," she agreed. "But it is powerful." Across the station, the backlash was already forming. Coalition channels filled with objections. Legal challenges stacked atop one another. Several elder species accused the Aurelians of manipulation. Others accused humanity of reckless disruption. And some, quietly, began asking questions. What if the humans are right? What if the system is broken? What if humor is not weakness? Commander Elira Voss met Cairo hours later in a secure strategy room filled with floating displays. Data streams wrapped around them like glowing ribbons. "You just changed how intent is defined in interstellar law," she said. Cairo rubbed his neck. "I didn't mean to." "That doesn't matter anymore," Elira replied. "What matters is what comes next." She flicked her wrist, bringing up projections. Trade routes opened. Energy access expanded. Human colonies previously restricted were now eligible for direct agreements. "The Aurelians are backing us," Elira continued. "Publicly. That scares the others." Cairo glanced at Salith, who stood near the wall, observing quietly. "Was that part of your plan?" Salith answered calmly. "I hoped. I did not assume." Elira studied her carefully. "You're risking a lot." "Yes," Salith said. "So is he." Elira nodded once. "That's what worries them." The Coalition's response came the next day. A formal challenge. Not legal. Cultural. The trial of continuity was ancient, rarely invoked. A test designed to prove whether a new force deserved a place in the existing order, or whether it threatened stability enough to be erased from influence. Humanity had been nominated. "You're kidding," Cairo said when he heard. "I wish I were," Elira replied. "They want to test whether humans can operate within long-term responsibility frameworks." Salith translated it more honestly. "They want to see if you can be controlled." The trial wasn't about strength or technology. It was about endurance, cooperation, and foresight, things the elder species believed humans lacked. The challenge was simple in form. Impossible in design. A failing star system on the edge of mapped space. Dying suns. Collapsing ecosystems. Refugee species abandoned because saving them required resources, creativity, and risk. The Coalition had debated it for centuries. No one had acted. "They want us to fix it," Cairo said slowly. "Yes," Salith replied. "Without violating existing laws." Elira added, "and without using military force." Cairo laughed, a sharp sound. "So they're testing whether we can save lives without breaking their precious rules." Exactly. The Coalition expected delay. Committees. Failure. What they got was a human planning session that lasted 6 hours and involved arguments, jokes, sketches on walls, and at least one near fistfight over energy equations. Humans didn't ask, "Is this allowed?" They asked, "Will this work?" Cairo led a mixed-species engineering team into the failing system within days. Not diplomats. Builders. Scientists. Farmers. Programmers. They rewired stars using mobile fusion scaffolds. They seeded planets with adaptive ecosystems built from borrowed alien biology and human trial and error models. They failed. A lot. Then they adjusted. Aliens watched in disbelief as humans ignored perfect models in favor of messy solutions that survived reality. They are breaking protocols, a coalition observer complained. Yes, another replied quietly. But the planets are stabilizing. Salith joined Cairo on a barren world that now held a thin blue sky. You are reckless, she said. He wiped sweat from his brow. We prefer flexible. You are changing how my people see yours. Good or bad? She watched new plants take root in red soil. Yes. When the trial ended, the system lived. Refugees returned. Trade followed. The coalition had no choice but to acknowledge the result. Humanity passed. Not because they followed the rules, but because they understood when to bend them without breaking what mattered. Back on Helix Station, the atmosphere had shifted. Humans were no longer just newcomers. They were partners, disruptors, and dangerous in the best possible way. Cairo stood beside Salith at the viewport once more. I never wanted this, he said quietly. She nodded. Neither did I. He glanced at her. Do you regret accepting? Her skin shimmered softly, warm, steady. No. The galaxy had learned something important. Humanity did not conquer. Humanity adapted. And that terrified anyone who depended on the universe staying predictable. The galaxy does not like surprises. It tolerates innovation only when it comes slowly, wrapped in permission and precedent. Humanity had done the unthinkable. They had succeeded too fast. The coalition did not celebrate the restored star system. They recorded it, archived it, and quietly began planning how to make sure it never happened again. Cairo Knox felt that change the moment he stepped back onto Helix Convergence Station. The looks were different now. Not dismissive. Not amused. Careful. Aliens who once ignored humans now studied them. Delegates whispered behind bioshields. Security drones lingered longer when humans passed. The universe had updated its threat assessment. Salith noticed it too. The elder species are afraid, she said as they walked through a transit corridor. Fear makes them predictable. Predictable how? Cairo asked. She stopped walking. They will try to isolate you. That answer proved correct within hours. The coalition announced a containment accord, a legal maneuver that restricted humanity's access to shared infrastructure until long-term behavioral stability could be assessed. It was diplomacy disguised as quarantine. Human trade slowed. Travel permissions were delayed. Mixed-species research teams were disbanded temporarily. No weapons. No threats. Just pressure. Elira Voss slammed her palm on the conference table when the notice arrived. They're strangling us without firing a shot. They believe time will weaken you, Salith said calmly. It has worked on others. Cairo leaned back in his chair, hands behind his head, staring at the ceiling. They don't understand humans very well, do they? No, Salith replied. They assume patience equals passivity. That was their mistake. Humanity adapted. Instead of fighting the restrictions, humans rerouted around them. They shared open-source designs, used microfabrication ships instead of centralized factories, turned idle cargo fleets into mobile workshops. Where the coalition closed doors, humans built windows. Colonies began communicating directly, bypassing official relays with creative networking solutions that confused alien monitoring systems. Human engineers used old, inefficient tech because it was flexible and impossible to fully regulate. You can't lock down chaos, Cairo said during one late-night planning session. You can only try to chase it. The coalition chased. They failed. But the true breaking point came when the Aurelians made their move. Salith's people announced a joint research and cultural exchange program with humanity. Public, legal, and impossible to block without openly violating coalition law. The reaction was immediate. Aurelian ambassadors were summoned. Threats were made. Ancient alliances strained. Salith stood before her own council and spoke plainly. Humans do not weaken stability, she said. They expose stagnation. Some agreed. Many did not. That night, Salith came to Cairo's quarters without ceremony. They are challenging my position, she said. If I continue, I may lose my status. Cairo sat up slowly. You don't owe us that. She met his eyes. I chose this. He hesitated. This started as a joke. And became a choice, she replied. Your people understand that better than mine. The coalition escalated. They called for a unity assembly, a rare gathering where all major powers voted on defining threats to galactic order. Humanity was on the agenda. Not as an enemy. As a destabilizing force. The wording was careful. Dangerous. If passed, humans wouldn't be attacked. They'd be limited. Managed. Overseen. Caged politely. Cairo was asked to speak. Not as a diplomat. As an example. The assembly hall was vast, ancient, and heavy with history. Species that lived longer than human civilizations watched from elevated platforms. Translators hummed. Eyes glowed. Antennae twitched. Cairo stood alone in the center again. He exhaled. He didn't bring notes. I'm not here to convince you humans are safe, he began. We're not. Murmurs rippled. We're emotional. We improvise. We break things and sometimes make messes that take generations to clean up. He looked around slowly. But we also fix problems you stopped trying to fix because they were inconvenient. A Threx elder spoke sharply. You disrupt balance. Cairo nodded. Because the balance is already broken. Silence. You built a galaxy that values order over life, he continued. Efficiency over empathy. Stability over growth. Humans don't fit that because we don't believe survival means standing still. Salith watched from the Aurelian platform, her expression unreadable. Cairo spread his hands. You fear us because we don't wait for permission to care. The assembly grew tense. A delegate asked, what do humans want? Cairo smiled faintly. A seat at the table. And the freedom to stand up when the table stops working. The vote was close. Too close. The result came down to one species. The Aurelians. Salith rose. Her voice carried, calm and unwavering. If humanity is declared a destabilizing force, then so are we. Gasps echoed. She continued. Because we choose to grow with them. The vote failed. By a single margin. The containment accord began to unravel. Allies hesitated. Smaller species followed the humans' example, questioning old limits, proposing bold solutions. The galaxy shifted, not violently, but permanently. Later, in a quiet corridor, Cairo and Salith stood together again. You could have lost everything, he said. I still might, she replied. But stagnation is a slower death. He nodded. Humans figured that out early. She studied him. You didn't plan this. No, he said honestly. But now that we're here, I don't want to go back. Neither did the galaxy. The old powers had pushed back. Humanity had pushed forward. And for the first time, the future felt uncertain in a way that meant possibility, not fear. Change never comes without a price. Humanity was learning that lesson faster than most species ever had. The galaxy had shifted, but it had not softened. After the Unity Assembly vote failed, the coalition did not openly retaliate. That would have united too many species against them. Instead, they did what old powers always did best. They waited. And while they waited, things began to break. Supply routes that humans relied on started experiencing technical failures. Navigation data arrived late or incomplete. Joint research stations reported sudden funding audits. Nothing illegal. Nothing obvious. Just enough friction to slow momentum. Elira Voss studied the reports in silence, her jaw tight. They're bleeding us, she said finally. Quietly. Cairo leaned over the holographic map. They're testing our patience. They assume you'll burn out, Salith added. Humans burn brightly, but briefly, in their view. Cairo snorted. They've never seen us tired before. That became the problem. Human colonies stretched themselves thin to keep projects alive. Engineers worked double shifts. Civilian fleets carried aid where official channels failed. People volunteered because that was what humans did when something mattered. But exhaustion crept in. Mistakes followed. A reactor miscalculation on a frontier station injured dozens. A food shipment arrived contaminated due to rushed adaptation protocols. For the first time, news feeds carried human faces filled not with excitement, but doubt. Are we moving too fast? One commentator asked. Are we risking everything? The coalition seized on that hesitation. A public inquiry was announced, this time not about law, but about responsibility. The message was subtle but sharp. Can humans be trusted with influence? Cairo felt it personally when he received the casualty report. He stared at the names longer than he should have. These people trusted us, he said quietly. Salith stood beside him. Leadership always carries unseen weight. I didn't ask for this. No, she said. But you accepted it. That night, Cairo couldn't sleep. He walked the station corridors alone, watching the stars drift past, thinking about jokes that turned into movements and choices that couldn't be undone. He stopped at an observation deck and found someone already there. A young alien technician, one of the smaller species, fragile-looking, eyes wide and luminous. They startled when they noticed him. Sorry, the technician said quickly. I'll leave. No, Cairo replied. You were here first. They hesitated, then stayed. I wanted to say thank you, the technician said softly. Because of humans, my people were allowed to return home. Cairo swallowed. I'm glad it helped. The technician tilted their head. The elders say humans are dangerous. Cairo smiled tiredly. We are. But, the technician continued, danger is not always bad. That stayed with him. The breaking point came days later. A coalition-controlled logistics hub denied emergency access to a human colony facing atmospheric failure. The request met all legal requirements. It was still refused. By the time alternate routes were arranged, lives were lost. Human channels erupted. Anger replaced doubt. This was deliberate, Elira said, voice shaking with restrained fury. They let people die to prove a point. Salith's skin darkened, Aurelian anger, tightly controlled. They are forcing a reaction. Cairo closed his eyes. For the first time since this began, he didn't joke. They think we'll respond like them, he said. With threats. With force. Elira looked at him. Won't we? He shook his head slowly. No. Both women turned to him. We respond like humans, Cairo continued. We make the system obsolete. Within hours, humans launched Project Open Horizon. No central authority. No permission. A decentralized network of civilian ships, modular habitats, and shared knowledge, open to any species willing to cooperate. It ignored coalition hubs entirely. Navigation was crowdsourced. Repairs were communal. Decisions were made locally, adapted in real time. It was messy. It was inefficient. It worked. Smaller species joined first. Then mid-tier powers. Even some coalition worlds quietly participated. You're undermining the entire control structure, Elira said, watching the expansion. Cairo nodded. We're not fighting it. We're walking around it. The coalition reacted too late. By the time they issued formal condemnations, Open Horizon was already sustaining millions. Shutting it down would cause a humanitarian disaster and expose the coalition's priorities. Public opinion shifted. For the first time, elder species faced something they could not suppress without losing moral authority. Salith watched it unfold with a mix of pride and concern. You are reshaping the galaxy, she said. Cairo looked exhausted. At a cost. She placed a hand on his arm, a gesture not traditionally Aurelian, but one she'd learned. Every transformation carries pain. What matters is whether the pain leads somewhere better. News arrived days later. The coalition formally recognized Open Horizon as an independent cooperative entity. Not an alliance. Not a rebellion. A new category. Humanity had forced the creation of a space the old systems hadn't planned for. That night, Cairo stood with Salith beneath the stars again. I don't know where this ends, he admitted. She looked at the glowing network spreading across the map. Neither do they. He smiled faintly. That might be our greatest advantage. Humanity had become loud. Not with weapons, but with presence. And the universe was finally listening. History rarely announces itself with explosions. Sometimes it arrives quietly, wrapped in decisions made by tired people who refuse to stop caring. Project Open Horizon spread faster than anyone predicted. Not because humans advertised it, but because it solved real problems. Refugees found transport. Broken worlds received tools instead of lectures. Small species that had lived under coalition protection for centuries suddenly tasted independence. The coalition panicked. Their control depended on scarcity, on being the gatekeepers of movement and survival. Open Horizon erased that leverage without firing a single shot. So they prepared their final move. It came as an emergency transmission across all known space. A system stability lockdown. All major jump gates would be temporarily sealed for safety and recalibration. Only coalition-approved traffic would pass. Open Horizon vessels would be denied access. It was the closest thing to a siege the galaxy had seen in 1,000 years. Cairo Knox read the announcement in silence. Then he laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was desperate. They're afraid, he said. That means we're running out of time. Elira Voss shook her head. If they lock the gates, billions are stranded. Supply chains collapse. Worlds starve. Salith stood very still, her skin dimmed to a color Cairo now recognized as controlled fear. If the gates close, my people will be forced to choose sides openly. And if they don't? Cairo asked. The coalition will punish them later. Cairo exhaled slowly. Then we don't let the gates close. Elira stared at him. We don't control them. No, he replied. But we understand systems. And systems always have assumptions. The gates were ancient, built by precursor civilizations no one fully understood. The coalition maintained them, regulated access, and enforced rules. But they didn't own the underlying logic. Humans had been studying it quietly for years. Not to control it. To understand it. Jump gates prioritize stability over authority, Cairo said, projecting schematics. They respond to load balancing, not politics. Elira's eyes widened. You're saying? If enough independent traffic routes around coalition hubs at once, Cairo continued, the gates will open automatically to prevent catastrophic energy buildup. Salith looked at him sharply. That would override coalition command. Yes. That would be seen as an act of rebellion. Cairo met her gaze. No. It would be seen as physics. The plan was insane. It required perfect timing, mass cooperation, and trust across species that had never trusted each other before. It was also the most human solution imaginable. Messages went out through Open Horizon channels. Not orders. Invitations. Move now. Carry what you can. Help who you see. Civilian ships responded. Cargo haulers. Research vessels. Medical transports. Alien freighters captained by species the coalition had ignored for centuries. No flags. No leaders. Just motion. The coalition initiated the lockdown. Jump gates began to dim. Then, they flared. Energy surged as traffic approached critical thresholds. Automated systems overrode command restrictions to prevent collapse. The gates opened. Everywhere. Coalition control screens filled with warnings. They tried to regain authority. The system refused. Across the galaxy, ships moved freely, not because someone allowed them to, but because stopping them would have broken everything. For one long, silent moment, the galaxy held its breath. Then life continued. Supplies flowed. Evacuations succeeded. Worlds stabilized. The Coalition's final weapon, control, had failed without a single shot fired. In the aftermath, emergency councils convened. Accusations flew. Blame shifted. But the truth was impossible to hide. Humanity had exposed a flaw the Elders had built their power upon. And once seen, it could not be unseen. Salith stood beside Cairo on the observation deck as reports poured in. "My people will support the restructuring," she said quietly. "Openly, this time." Cairo nodded. "That's going to cost you." "Yes," she replied. "But less than silence would." Elira joined them, her face pale but determined. "The Coalition is calling for a full Reformation summit." Cairo raised an eyebrow. "That sounds historic." Elira smiled thinly. "They don't have a choice." Below them, ships moved like fireflies across the dark, human and alien, together. Cairo leaned against the glass. "I didn't want to lead a revolution." Salith looked at him. "You didn't. You led an alternative." That was the difference. Humanity hadn't torn the galaxy apart. They had shown it another way to exist. And now, everything would change. The summit was held in silence. Not because there was peace, but because no one wanted to be the first to pretend this was business as usual. The Reformation Summit gathered more species than any meeting in recorded history. Old powers. Small worlds. Former observers who had never been invited before. Humans stood among them, not elevated, not bowed, just present. That alone was revolutionary. Cairo Knox stood near the edge of the chamber, hands in his pockets, watching history try to reorganize itself. He looked tired. Older. Like someone who had run a marathon he never trained for and couldn't stop halfway through. Salith Vera stood beside him, no longer behind the Aurelian delegation, but with him, openly, unmistakably. Her presence sent a clear message. This choice was not an accident. The Coalition speaker finally addressed the assembly. "The events of recent cycles have revealed structural weaknesses in our governance," the speaker said, choosing words carefully. "We must decide how to proceed." Cairo almost laughed. Weaknesses. That's what they called centuries of control built on fear of change. Delegates spoke one by one. Some demanded restrictions on Open Horizon. Others called for oversight. A few admitted, quietly, that humanity had saved worlds the Coalition had abandoned. Then a small species spoke. One that had never been given a vote before. "Our people survived because humans did not ask if helping was allowed," the delegate said. "They asked if it was needed." Another followed. Then another. A pattern formed. This wasn't about humans anymore. It was about choice. When the speaker finally turned to Cairo, the room went still. "Human representative," the speaker said, "what does your species seek?" Cairo stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't posture. "We don't want to replace you," he said simply. "We don't want control. We don't want to rule the galaxy." Some delegates frowned. Others leaned in. "We want freedom to act when systems fail. Freedom to help without permission. Freedom to make mistakes and fix them." He paused, letting the words settle. "Humans aren't better than you," he continued. "We're just unwilling to wait while people suffer." The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't tension. It was consideration. Salith spoke next. "The Aurelians support a new framework," she said. "One where Open Horizon is recognized as a permanent, independent cooperative. Where gate control is transparent. Where no single power can lock the galaxy into stillness." The Coalition resisted. But resistance without leverage is just noise. The vote passed. Not unanimously, but decisively. The coalition dissolved itself into a galactic assembly, not rulers, but participants. Gate authority became distributed. Open Horizon was recognized not as a faction, but as a function, a living system of cooperation. The galaxy didn't become peaceful overnight. But it became possible. Later, much later, Cairo stood with Salith at the same observation deck where it all began. Stars stretched endlessly before them. "I keep thinking about that joke," Cairo said quietly. "What if I hadn't said it?" Salith looked at the stars. Then someone else would have broken the silence later. Or the galaxy would have continued as it was until it collapsed under its own caution. He smiled faintly. Humans are good at breaking silence. "Yes," she agreed. "And at surviving the noise that follows." Below them, ships moved freely. No escorts. No permissions. Just motion. Cairo exhaled. So, was it worth it? Salith turned to him fully now, her eyes reflecting starlight and something warmer. "You turned a joke into a future," she said. "Most civilizations never manage that." He laughed softly. "Still can't believe you said yes." She allowed herself a real smile. Someone had to. The galaxy moved on, not because it was forced to, but because it finally remembered that systems exist to serve life, not the other way around. And somewhere in the endless dark, humanity's reputation settled into something new. Not conquerors. Not saviors. But the species that looked at impossible rules, smiled, and asked, "What happens if we try anyway?" End of story.